Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're all about getting to the heart of complex topics, cutting through the noise. And today we're diving into something that has the potential to really shake things up in the world of AI.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're talking about Model Context Protocol. You might see it abbreviated as MCP.
That's right, MCP.
And for those of you who are maybe not super deep in the AI world, don't worry. We're going to break down what it is and why it matters. You're in the right place.
Yeah, consider this your crash course in MCP and how it's going to change how AI interacts with, well, pretty much everything.
Exactly. It's all about giving AI, especially these large language models you hear about, the ones that can generate text, translate languages, all that cool stuff, giving them a much more powerful and seamless way to interact with the world around them.
It really is. It's about accessing information, utilizing applications, and solving complex problems in ways that, we're just starting to see the potential of.
Yeah, and the core question we're going to unpack today is this. What is MCP? How does it compare to those traditional APIs, those application programming interfaces? If you've ever thought about how different apps on your phone work together, APIs are usually behind that.
Right. APIs are everywhere.
Yeah, and we've got some fascinating material here that delves into both APIs and MCP, the similarities, the differences, and what it all means for the future. And specifically, we're going to touch on decentralized applications because that's a big part of this.
Yeah, decentralized applications and a platform called Agenie.
Right, AGA. So our mission today is to pull out the most important insights from all of this research.
Absolutely. Make it clear and understandable so you can walk away with a solid grasp of MCP, what it does and why it matters, all without having to pore over tons of technical documents.
Exactly. We've done the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Traditional APIs. When we talk about these, what are we really talking about?
Well, at its heart, a traditional API is essentially a set of rules. It allows different software applications to communicate with each other.
So it's the language they speak to each other.
Exactly. They're like digital intermediaries. So when one piece of software, needs something from another piece of software, whether that's data or a specific function, the API lays out exactly how that request and response should happen.
Okay. So it's like if one app wants to know what song another app is playing,
right,
the API is like the rule book that tells them how to talk to each other.
Exactly. It's the protocol. And a very common type of API that you'll come across is called a RESTful API.
RESTful.
Yeah, RESTful APIs. And these primarily use the language of the internet, which is HTTP.
Okay.
And they rely on specific web addresses, which are called endpoints. For example, if an application wants to get some data, it might send a request to an address that looks something like, get data.
Get data.
Exactly. So it's like sending a letter to a very specific address to retrieve a specific piece of information.
Okay. I like that analogy. That makes it much clearer. Now, based on what we've been reading, what are some of the defining characteristics of these traditional APIs?
So there are several key traits that really stand out. First of all, they're designed to be very versatile, right? They can be used across a wide range of software integrations, whether it's your web browser talking to a server to display a web page or a mobile game saving your highest score to a leaderboard. They're built for general purpose communication.
Okay. So they're kind of like the jack of all trades of the software world.
Yeah, you could say that. They're adaptable. The second thing is that they're largely predefined. So if a developer wants to use an API, they need to know exactly what endpoints are available and the specific methods to interact with them.
So you can't just kind of like broadly ask for something. You need to know where to look and how to ask for it.
Right. It's like knowing not just the building's address, but also the specific office you need to go to and which form you need to fill out to get what you need.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then the third defining characteristic is that the communication typically follows a request-response pattern.
Okay.
So one application sends a request, the other sends back a response.
Pretty straightforward.
It is. It's like a single back and forth, kind of like asking a question and getting a direct answer. Now, if you want more continuous interaction, you often need to build additional mechanisms, like something called webhooks, which can push information in real time.
Okay. So that's if you want that constant stream of data coming in.
Right. Exactly.
And we have a really good example of this in our research about a weather app.
Yeah, the weather app.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so a weather app using a traditional API, it might have a specific web address and endpoint to request the current temperature for a particular city.
Okay.
The app sends a request to that exact address, and then the server sends back the temperature data. very straightforward, but it's entirely dependent on that pre-established structure.
Yeah, it needs to know exactly where to ask.
Exactly. It's like your weather app needs to know exactly where to send the request to get the temperature for your city.
Makes sense. And it's important to remember that this way of doing things, this whole API thing, it hasn't stayed the same, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's evolved over time.
Yeah, the world of APIs has been in constant flux. It's always adapting, trying to meet new demands and overcome limitations.
Yeah, we were reading about how we've moved from older methods like SOAP to the REST APIs that are more common now.
Exactly.
That
From
was
SOAP to REST. And this evolution really sets the stage for understanding why something like MCP is emerging now.
Yeah.
It's building on decades of experience with how software interacts.
Okay, so now that we've got a good understanding of these traditional APIs, let's shift gears and talk about this newer development.
Sure.
Model Context Protocol, MCP. What is it?
So MCP is a newer approach, and it's important to note it's an open standard.
Okay.
This means it's designed to be accessible and usable by anyone.
I like that.
Yeah. And it's specifically designed to make connections for AI models, particularly for those large language models we talked about earlier, to connect with the outside world much more smoothly.
Okay.
We're talking about external tools, data sources, all of that. And the source we're looking at here uses some really helpful analogies.
Okay, let's hear them. I love a good analogy.
Yeah, so they describe MCP as being like a USB-C port for AI applications.
Yeah.
Or like a universal connector.
Okay.
And think about how USB-C has really simplified connecting devices to your computer.
Yeah.
It's one standard that works for a whole range of things.
It's made things so much easier.
Exactly. And that's kind of what MCP aims to do for AI.
Okay. So instead of having, a bunch of different specific, maybe even proprietary ways for AI to connect, there's this move toward one common standard.
Right. It's about creating a universal language for AI to plug into the world around it. And this is huge because it opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah.
So what does this enable AI systems to do? Well, the source highlights several key capabilities. First of all, it gives them much more seamless access to external resources.
Okay. So that means an AI can pull in real-time data.
Right.
It can trigger actions in other systems.
Exactly. And it can do it with much less complexity than with traditional APIs.
So this sounds a lot more adaptable than those fixed endpoints that we were talking about with traditional APIs.
It is. It really is.
It's more flexible.
It is. It's like, instead of having to go through a very specific door, you can now kind of move around more freely.
I like that.
The second thing MCP enables is dynamic discovery.
Dynamic discovery.
Yeah. This is really cool. Imagine an AI being able to browse through all sorts of different tools, identify the one that it needs for a specific task without having to be told where they are and how they work beforehand.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the AI can kind of think for itself a little bit more.
Exactly. It's got more agency, more independence.
Yeah.
And that's a significant leap forward. It means AI can be more creative in problem solving.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And then the third thing MCP enables is real-time communication.
Okay.
So it facilitates two-way interactive exchanges, kind of like a continuously open line of communication.
So it's not just, the AI asking a question and getting a static answer.
Right.
It's this ongoing flow.
It is. It's like, imagine having a conversation with someone as opposed to sending a letter back and forth.
I see. Okay, so it's less like email, more like instant messaging.
Precisely. It's much more dynamic and responsive.
Okay, that's a big difference.
And it's worth noting that MCT was developed by a company called Anthropic.
Anthropic.
Yeah, Anthropic.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it open source, which means that they're really pushing for standardization. It's this idea that we need a common language, a common protocol for AI models to integrate with all sorts of systems.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like creating this universal translator for AI.
Yeah, exactly. It reduces the need for all that custom code that was often required when using traditional APIs in AI applications.
Okay, so we're starting to see some real distinctions emerge between MCP and those traditional APIs.
Absolutely.
But the source we're looking at also points out that there are some similarities.
There are, yeah.
Some reasons why, at first glance, you might think, oh, isn't this just a new version of APIs?
Right. And at a very basic level, they do serve a similar purpose.
Okay.
They both enable communication between different software components.
So they're both kind of like bridges.
Yeah, bridges, they're connecting different parts of the software world.
And maybe connecting different types of things.
Exactly. And the source highlights a few key parallels. One is standardized integration.
Okay.
So traditional APIs, they provide a structured way for software to interact with other software. And MCP does something similar, but it specifically focuses on how AI models interact with tools and data. It's about bringing a sense of order, a sense of predictability to these interactions.
Yeah, it's like having a common framework for how things work together.
Exactly. It's crucial for effective communication.
Makes sense.
Another similarity is interoperability.
Okay.
So think about how traditional APIs have really fostered these rich ecosystems.
Okay.
You've got payment gateways, social media platforms, all these different services, providing APIs that allow other services to connect and integrate.
Yeah, I can see that.
And MCP aims to cultivate a similar ecosystem, but specifically for AI. So now AI models will be able to seamlessly connect with a wide range of tools and services.
Oh, okay. So it's about creating this environment where different AI models and different tools can all play nicely together.
Right. It's about building a more interconnected AI landscape.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then finally, the source points out this evolutionary trend. We've seen APIs evolve over time. We talked about SOAP to REST. And MCP kind of fits into that progression, right? It's a protocol specifically designed for the age of AI.
Okay.
It's building on the core concepts of APIs, but adapting them for the unique demands of artificial intelligence.
So it's not a complete break from the past.
No, not at all.
It's more like an evolution.
Exactly. It's taking those lessons learned from previous API development and innovating for this new era of intelligent systems.
Okay, that gives us some really good context. Now, let's get into what really sets MCP apart, especially when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
You know, the source really stresses that this isn't just some minor update or a tweak.
No, it's not. This is where the real innovation comes in, especially when we consider platforms like Agenie.
Okay, so let's break down these key differences.
All right, so one of the most significant differences is this concept of dynamic discovery.
Dynamic discovery.
Yeah. With MCP, AI models can essentially find and utilize available tools and resources in real time, without having to be explicitly programmed with all the specific addresses and instructions on how to interact with them.
Wow, okay, so it's a lot more autonomous.
It is. You know, traditional APIs require developers to have all that detailed knowledge up front.
Yeah.
They have to write code that specifically targets those interfaces.
So it's a much more manual process.
It is. But with MCP, the AI can figure things out on the fly.
Okay, so this gives the AI a much greater degree of independence.
Absolutely. It's like, instead of giving the AI a very detailed step-by-step instruction manual for every single interaction, you're giving it a directory of available services and the intelligence to figure out how to use them.
Oh, I see. So it's like giving them the tools to learn and adapt.
Precisely. And that's incredibly powerful, especially as AI applications become more and more complex.
Yeah, it's got to be able to keep up.
It does. And then another crucial difference is the inherent support for real-time two-way communication. MCP is designed for interactive back-and-forth exchanges.
So the AI can not only retrieve data, but it can also send commands back.
Exactly. It creates a much more dynamic and responsive interaction. Now, traditional REST APIs can technically be configured to do something similar.
Okay.
But it often involves more complex setups.
More workarounds.
Exactly. But MCP, it makes this kind of sustained interaction much more integral, much more straightforward.
I see. So it's like it's built into the system.
Right. Think back to our phone line analogy.
Okay.
MCP is designed to keep that line open.
For that constant back and forth.
Precisely. It's not just about getting a snapshot of information. It's about having this ongoing dialogue.
That's really interesting. And then there's the design philosophy itself.
Right.
MCP is built specifically with AI in mind.
Exactly. It's tailored to the unique needs of AI models. It makes it easier for those large language models to access and utilize information from all these different systems.
In traditional APIs, they're more general purpose, right?
They are.
So they might need a lot of tweaking to work for AI.
They do. It's like using a multi-tool versus a specialized instrument designed for a very particular job.
So MCP is kind of like that specialized instrument optimized for AI.
It is.
Okay, that makes sense. And all of this leads to simplified integration.
Right.
Which is a big deal, right?
It is. A primary goal of MCP is to reduce the amount of custom code that developers need to write to connect AI models to external systems. This has historically been a major bottleneck. It takes a lot of time. It's complex.
Yeah, it's time-consuming and it's expensive.
Exactly. MCP wants to streamline all of that.
Okay. So less custom coding means faster development, easier maintenance.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about making things more efficient.
Everybody wins.
To really illustrate this, let's go back to that example from our sources about Agenie and a decentralized marketplace.
Okay, yeah, let's bring it back to that.
So imagine you're building an AI agent on the Agenie platform.
Okay.
And this agent's job is to manage the inventory of goods in a decentralized marketplace.
Okay, I'm following you.
With MCP, this agent could automatically discover tools for managing inventory.
Yeah.
It can fetch real-time data on stock levels, and then it can update the product listings, all through this one standardized communication protocol.
Wow, okay, that sounds incredibly efficient.
It is. It's streamlined.
Yeah.
Now, imagine trying to do that with traditional APIs. You'd probably need to build separate integrations for each inventory system, each data source, all those different functions. It'd be a huge project.
Oh, yeah, that would be a nightmare.
It would. But MCP really simplifies things.
So for platforms like ArcBlock, the company behind AG, this seems like it's a game changer.
It is.
How does this all fit into their vision?
Well, from their perspective, integrating MCP into Agenie has the potential to really amplify its capabilities.
Okay.
It makes AG much more powerful, much more accessible, can connect to way more external data sources, and it can do it without requiring users to do all that complex integration coding themselves.
So it's like democratizing AI development.
You could say that. It lowers the barrier to entry for creating sophisticated AI applications.
That's really cool. And, you know, the source we're looking at, they even go so far as to say it will superpower Agenie, its AI agents, and more.
It's a powerful statement, and it really speaks to the potential of MCP to unlock new levels of interaction between AI and the decentralized world.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. And if anyone's interested in learning more about Agenie specifically, the source provides a link.
It does. It's https://www.aga.io.
We'll make sure to include that in the show notes as well. So let's come back to this idea that some people might see MCP as, oh, it's just a new version of APIs.
Right.
But there's a twist, right?
There is a twist, yeah. And it's understandable why someone might initially see it that way. At a high level, MCP does perform a similar function to traditional APIs.
Okay.
It's all about facilitating communication between different parts of the software world.
Yeah, it's that bridge.
It is. And in that sense, it's a natural evolution.
Okay.
You know, it's taking that established concept of APIs and adapting it for the world of AI. So for a developer who's already familiar with APIs, MCP might feel like the next logical step.
Okay, so familiar foundation, but some new advanced features.
Exactly. But here's the twist. That initial perception might actually undersell the significance of MCP.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's not just a superficial update. Those features we've been talking about, dynamic discovery, real-time communication, simplified integration, those aren't just incremental improvements. They're actually fundamental shifts in how AI can interact with and utilize systems around it.
So it's not just connecting systems, it's connecting them in a way that's intelligent and autonomous and responsive.
Precisely. It's a qualitative leap forward.
I see.
And for platforms like ArcBlock, this is a strategic move.
Okay.
MCP allows them to build AI-driven decentralized applications with levels of interaction and responsiveness that simply wouldn't be possible with traditional APIs alone. At least, not without a lot of extra work.
Yeah, it's about building a future where these systems can really talk to each other seamlessly and intelligently.
Exactly. It's about unlocking the potential of a truly interconnected AI-powered world.
This has been a fantastic conversation, really insightful. Let's bring it all together for our listeners.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways they should remember about MCP?
Well, the main thing is this. MCP is an evolution of traditional APIs,
Okay.
but it's specifically designed for AI.
Okay.
It offers these really critical advancements like dynamic discovery, real-time two-way communication, and much simpler integration than traditional APIs.
So it's like an API superhighway built specifically for AI.
That's a great analogy.
It's purpose-built for the demands of artificial intelligence.
It is. And now, I want you to consider the implications of this. How might MCP change the way AI applications are built, how they interact with the world? What new possibilities does this API superhighway for AI unlock?
Yeah, what problems can we now solve that we couldn't before?
Exactly. What new opportunities are out there?
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to chew on, something that builds on what we've discussed but wasn't explicitly mentioned in our sources.
Okay.
Could MCP become a foundational layer for a whole new generation of intelligent, interconnected applications?
Hmm.
Applications that go beyond even what we currently think AI is capable of? Imagine a world where AI can seamlessly tap into vast amounts of information and functionality.
It's an exciting thought,
It is.
and it's one that we need to grapple with.
Absolutely. So that's your deep dive thought for today. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Model Context Protocol. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of emerging technology.